Built for builders, from beginners to pros, this is where great backyards begin. Welcome to the Ultimate Deck Podcast, your source for backyard building tips, product breakdowns, and pro advice from the front lines of the industry. Here are your hosts, Shane Chapman and Wade Laurent.
Welcome everybody back to the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Shane Chapman here with you today by my lonesome. Just me in the studio today. Wade is away in Saskatoon, so you're just stuck with me. But that's okay, because today we're talking about adjustable deck footings, and it's really a one-person conversation, so we'll get after it. So when you're doing a deck, obviously you require footings, enough said. However, in many areas of the world, people use adjustable deck footings, and in many other areas of the world, they would find that to be completely silly. But given that we are in an area of the world where they are very, very common, it is something we want to talk about today, because there's a few products out there that'll help you to give your deck adjustable footing options. Now, if you're going to build a deck with a properly depthed pile that is never going to move, so if you're in California, that might be 12 inches. If you're in Winnipeg, Manitoba, that might be 12 feet. If you're going to do a pile that is guaranteed to never move, or you're going to do a helical screw pile that has some adjustment already built in it, then you don't need these products. These products that we're going to talk about today are more built for the areas where you're allowed to do on-grade footings or shallow footings. You're expecting the deck to move. You're building it with that in mind. And you want to give the deck some adjustability so that when it does inevitably move from frost heave, from settling, from whatever, that you have the ability to level the deck off without too much trouble. Now, a lot of areas are going to require this deck to be floating in order to do this. A lot of areas, if you attach the deck to your house, you're not allowed to use these types of on-grade footings with the adjustable functionality. But there is quite a few areas, ours included, that do still allow, even if you're attaching to a house, allow an adjustable footing. You can argue whether that's a good idea or not. I don't think there's very many things to check in the pros column for that aside from cost. But the fact of the matter is it's happening. So if you're going to do that, you might as well use a footing that is adjustable to minimize the effort later when it will inevitably move. So in our areas, if you're tuning in from Regina, Saskatchewan, or Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, for example, or around there, many times if the deck is under 6 feet tall, you're allowed to not have to do an actual engineered in-ground footing. You can use these adjustable on-grade footings. In other areas around those cities that are smaller towns around, they require these over 2 feet. You'll need an actual engineered in-ground pile. So just make sure to check with your local building department, because even from 30 miles down the road from where I am right now, the rules are different versus what the rules are in the city I'm in. So check this first to make sure you're even allowed to use these things. But, and one other caveat, these products are marketed as deck products, but they can be used for a variety of functions. I know that a lot of people use these same footings for sheds, for other outdoor structures that require some leveling at some point in time where you're not doing permanent in-ground footings. So we call them deck footings, but they could really be used for any project outside that requires some adjustment. So there's going to be 3 products we're kind of talking about today. Undoubtedly, there's more in the market, but these are kind of the 3 most common. And one of them is by far the most common, at least through our stores. So we're going to talk about the GH Leveller product, and we're going to talk about the Pylex adjustable footings products, and we're going to talk about the Pylex adjustable helical piles. So these are all Canadian-made products. Their availability may be less in the United States. I believe Pylex is probably fairly easily findable in the United States, but the GH Levellers may not be as findable. You can find them at tuds.ca, tuds.ca, because we do sell and ship them everywhere, but you might not find them on the shelves of a local box store in the States, nor in Canada for that matter. But let's talk about these footings here. So the first thing we're going to talk about, I guess first of all, the pros and cons of using these things in the first place. Aside from the fact that they can be adjusted down the road if the deck heaves or settles, they're also handy to use at the time of install because it allows for micro adjustments without having to excavate or set your pads perfectly precisely within the 16th of an inch. You can allow the the product to do some of the adjustment for you. So if you're on uneven ground or minor slope or whatever, you simply need to get your base kind of close. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can get it close and then allow the product to give you some adjustment. So often these products are used in combination with some sort of concrete slab or a concrete, whatever you want to call them, elephant foot, cottage block, floating pier, whatever you want to call them, the diamond shaped piers that you see often that are used on top of ground. These products are kind of used with those or with the slab. So it's nice because you can cut your post loosely, get it within a 1/4 inch kind of thing, set your pad, get it nice and tamped down, get it close, and then use the threaded rod of the adjustable footing to actually do your fine tuning to make sure that your beams are level and level to each other as well from footing to footing. So that makes it kind of nice. And then of course the benefit after the fact, after install, is if that footing happens to settle, whether it's because whatever, you didn't excavate enough organic material out and, organic material decays and the soil settles. Maybe it was disturbed soil that you were putting it on in the first place. Maybe you're in a frost area where the frost will heave the ground and then settle again in the summer or in the spring when it thaws. Maybe you're on expansive clay soils where moisture alone will cause the ground to swell and settle day to day almost. So for a variety of reasons, these allow you to do some adjustments. So we'll go through these each and talk about pros and cons of each of these products. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is GH Levellers. GH Levellers are actually a Saskatchewan-made product. The couple that I suppose invented these things or manufactures them is from near Morse, Saskatchewan. They actually appeared on Dragon's Den, like I would say, let's call it 6 or 7 years ago, likely. So they were on the Canadian Dragon's Den with this product. If I recall correctly, they had a deal with one of the dragons, which then they ended up declining. The GH Leveller people decided to opt out of it in post. Once they went through all their due diligence and whatnot, they decided to do this themselves and not accept the investment. But it was a cool enough product that they had interest. And so really neat story. Great couple that sells these products. They literally drive around in their RV, or at least they did at one point, and they made the most of their summer holidays by camping all over the country and stopping by dealers to show the product and made the most of it. So kind of a fun story. But essentially it's a very simplistic product. It's essentially 2 giant flat washers with a giant nut welded to it and a threaded rod. That's the simplicity of the solution. Is it's not complicated by any means. There's probably been a lot of farmers out there just like they were, or truckers that have come up with their own solutions, and they just decided to bring this thing to market. So it's a beefy top and bottom plate with a nut on it and a 1-inch grade 5 bolt. That's all it is. And so the way, you'll have to see a video to see exactly how it works, but the threaded rod turns up and kind of is housed inside the wood post. So if you're going to put a 4x4 or a 6x6 post on this thing, you simply drill a hole into the post, mount the one washer plate on the one side, and then screw the other side into it, screw the bolt into it. And the bolt actually goes up inside the post and kind of is housed in there. The standard version, which is all there was for the first, let's call it 5-6 years, has about 3 inches of adjustment on that rod. They carry an absolute behemoth amount of weight. They're engineered and marketed as 7,000 pounds, but they've got a direct center down, whatever you want to call it, a direct center load capacity of 18,000 pounds. And I know the gentleman that is behind this product says he's parked his semi-trucks on this thing and he's like, it holds tens of thousands of pounds. But they've got their engineering and they market it as holding 7,000 pounds, but it's a beefy 7,000 pounds. So the nice thing about these versus some of the other options we're going to talk about, these are very inconspicuous. They actually are not wider than a 4x4 post. I believe the plate on top probably measures, I would say, about 3 inches. I don't have one in front of me here, but probably about 3 inches. And so it's actually smaller than the 3.5 inch post. So what that means is it's very clean and tidy looking, and it doesn't stick out around the post. So if you're wanting to skirt around the deck, or just not have anything protruding out from the edge of the post, this hides nice and cleanly underneath the post. If you're going to put a composite deck sleeve or vinyl sleeve over the post, these little units will hide in that same sleeve, and you can keep it looking super clean without much effort. Some of the other products that will sit into those elephant feet, the trouble with those is that if you put them on a flush beam deck or right at the edge of a deck, the footing, the cottage block can protrude out from the edge of the deck. So if you're planning on skirting down to the ground, that gets in the way and you got to cut around it or find another solution. Not a problem with these ones. They can attach directly under the post or even under the 2-ply beam and not protrude out. So you can get a nice clean finish if you're planning on trying to hide them. So really cool. Now, the only complaint I had about these things at one point was, well, there's only 3 inches of adjustment. Sometimes you get some pretty wicked frost heave and settling or pretty wicked expansive clay soil movement in and around our area anyway, and you may want more than that 3 inches. And 3 inches, you might think, well, that's quite a bit. But if you're going to set the adjustable footing at kind of the midpoint so you've got expandability both ways or adjustability both ways, you've only got 1.5 inches each way. So great news. They just this past year came out with the GH Leveller XL, which has a 6-inch rod on it. And so I think that's the perfect solution there. A little bit more adjustability, still the same capacity, just gives you more room to move if you happen to need to. I know many people out there are probably gonna be like, well, that's even 3 inches is a ton. And yes, you would think so. But indulge me for a second. A few years ago, we had an extremely, extremely dry summer. Like Saskatchewan is dry normally, but it was really bad. And because of the clay soils in and around the Regina area, there was contractors that were needing to go back out and cut new posts for some people because they used an adjustable footing of some sort that only gave them 3 inches of adjustability, and they were needing to adjust these things like 5 or 6 inches. And so they had to cut new posts anyway. So the fact that these now are available with a 6-inch rod in them is a little bit more forgiving and will help to eliminate some of those situations where you need to replace posts again. So that's great. Again, these can be used on sheds or any sorts of outdoor structures where you have a footing in contact with the ground and want to give it some adjustability. So pretty great things. The next product we're going to talk about is the Pylex adjustable deck support. These have been around a little bit longer. They are also a Canadian company out of Quebec. Very similar functionality. They aren't as heavy duty, so they only do 2,725 pounds as opposed to 7,000 pounds. But a similar type setup. They do have a small plate on the bottom. They have a saddle that kind of houses the 4x4 post on it, so they're not nearly as hidden as the GH Levellers. You will see them. They do need to sit on like in one of those cottage blocks or elephant feet, whatever you want to call them. So the whole apparatus is quite a bit less appealing to look at, we'll say, or a little bit harder to hide or harder to ignore. But they're common. You can find them anywhere, and they serve the purpose. Now the saddles, they come in a variety of saddles. The most common being a saddle for a 4x4 post, a saddle for a 6x6 post, or an adjustable saddle that allows you to fit anywhere from a 3-inch to 7-inch post, because you just loosen a nut and the saddle slides apart to adjust to different size posts. They've also got like corner posts and 2-ply beam saddles and everything else, but most commonly 4x4, 6x6, and in the adjustable 3x7, 3-2-7, I should say. So they're good. They're just lighter capacity. They're a little bit like they've got a tall sleeve on them. They look a little bit more suspect. They look a little bit like they're kind of skipped leg day, but they do serve the purpose, and they are functional, and they're used a lot in our area. You see them all over the place, and they function just fine. They can also be flipped upside down. So if you're actually pouring an in-ground pile, a concrete pile, you can flip the hollow tube part down and put it into the concrete to allow the adjustable saddle to sit into the concrete pile as opposed to on top of the concrete pile. So you've got that option as well. Very similar functionality though to the GH Levellers. The purpose and the function is the same. They're just a little bit lighter duty and not as attractive looking, in my opinion. They are powder coated black. There used to be green ones. I don't know if they're still out there or not, but so these are steel. They're powder coated, as are the GH Levellers. So they're stainless steel actually, so they don't rust. Then the other ones we were going to talk about was the adjustable helical piles from Pylex. So same company, different product. These are available in a 32-inch or a 50-inch. We only sell the 50-inch because if you're going to screw them into the ground, you might as well get as deep as you can. These have the same kind of saddle, same kind of rod as the adjustable supports we just talked about, but they screw into the ground as opposed to sitting on top of the ground. Now, if your frost area is less than 3 feet, then great, these 50-inch piles will get below that and serve that purpose as well. However, in most areas in Canada, or at least in the prairies, you're going to be deeper than that. And so these piles aren't going to get deep enough to fight all the frost. They will partially work in the frost zone. However, they have 2-foot extensions that you can add to these to go deeper. So if you want to go deeper, you want to get down to 6 feet, even 8 feet, you could. Now you're starting to get that's a tall, skinny pole. I don't know that I would just going super, super deep on those, but if you want to go an extra 2 feet, no problem. You add the extension on, you go a little bit deeper. These come with a 4x4 saddle on them. If you need something bigger, if you want to put a 6x6 on it, you could either notch the 6x6 post to sit into that saddle, or you can actually purchase the ones we just talked about, the adjustable saddles for a 6x6 or the 3 to 7 inch expandable ones. And you can take that saddle, the rod out of that and drop it into these helical screw piles. They have the same size tube. So you can swap the saddles if you need to. So these are nice. They do go into the ground, so it does require, manually I should say, it does require you to walk in a circle with a 2x4 and drive these in. If you are a contractor who uses these frequently, there is an adapter that we also offer that allows you to put this on a large impact wrench and drive these things home. So you need like a large 1-inch impact wrench that you can actually drive these in with an electric drill or what have you, or a cordless drill. But not just any drill, you need a large impact wrench. So these can drive super cleanly and easily as well. One little tip and trick for these, if you're in an area that's got potentially obstructions in the soil, they suggest you can pound a piece of rebar down through into the ground where you're planning on placing this to see if there's going to be any obstructions. And if it goes in and it's clear and free, all good. You put the pile over top of that piece of rebar, and since the pile's hollow, it'll spin around it and you're fine. It just avoids you from driving it halfway in before you find out there's a rock or something in the way. So little tip and trick. They do support a little bit more weight than the adjustable Pylex ones. So these ones will do up to 5,000 pounds, they say, in sandy soils and up to 3,500 pounds in clay soils. Again, that's assuming that you're hitting the max torque that they're wanting in those conditions. So those are guidelines and maximums only. That doesn't mean it for sure can do that much, but it can do up to that much if the right conditions exist. These are a little bit more clean looking because you can drive them straight into the ground, and all that's sticking out is a little bit of the threaded rod and then your saddle. So they're a little bit cleaner looking than the Pylex adjustable deck supports, but I would still probably give the edge to the GH Levellers as far as what overall looks the cleanest. So 3 options for adjusting your deck in the future. Now, each of these, if the deck does settle or heave, all you have to do is get out there with a wrench. A longer handle gives you a little bit more leverage and easy to turn, and you just have to go out there and adjust the nut that's on them. So it can be easier if you use a bottle jack or a car jack of some sort to take some of the weight up off it, and then you can spin it a little bit easier. But often it's not necessary. If you use a plumbing wrench or something with enough leverage, you can turn the nuts on them and adjust your deck on the fly. I know it's hard to believe you can adjust thousands of pounds with a wrench, but it is possible to do. And it makes adjusting it seasonally or whenever it becomes too out of level a fairly easy to accomplish maintenance task. So if you're not going to do a proper in-depth, deep engineered pile that's never going to move, make sure you build some sort of adjustability into it. And these products are exactly for that, to give you that adjustability. All of these products are available on tuds.ca, tuds.ca on our website. If you're looking for them, GH Leveller with 2 L's, Pylex, Pylex, adjustable deck footing or helical screw pile. And then, like I said, there is extensions available for the helical, and there is the installation tool. Boy, the name of it escapes me, but there is the 1-inch adapter for the impact wrench if you want to do that as well, to drive these home. Not worth it unless you're doing these all the time. Another handy use for the small helicals, actually, a lot of guys are using them, is for landing stairs on. So you may be using the big 7 to 10 foot or 20 foot even deep, 2.5 inch, 3 inch pipe helical piles with the 10 inch plates or 12 inch plates on them. You may be using those for the whole deck, but a lot of guys will use these kind of small light duty ones just for landing stairs on. So a lot of those guys will purchase that adapter so that they can drive those stair ones on every deck, a couple of them on every deck, and makes quick work of giving a pile for your stairs as well. So hopefully that helps to figure out whether it's something that makes sense for your project. Bottom line is, if you're not doing a pile deep in the ground that's never going to move, then yes, you do want to give yourself some adjustability, and these products are going to do that for you. Hope that helps, and until next week, take care.